the car park, which is where she came with the dog and the kids, dropped them off at school. And then we're going to walk along the road, just to give you an overview, walk along the road, walk down by the river. And then from there, we are going to walk around the fields and try to get an idea of what might have happened.
Okay, so you may have watched that, and I did. I thought it's so strange how every time you go back to the park, you see something different. And so what I want to do is I want to evaluate the reenactment, the recreation that Sky News have done. In some ways, it's very good. I've got to also say the map that they've put together is one of the best, but it could still do with a little bit of improvement. I think I'm actually going to pull that up. Let's just see if I can minimize this. This is the map from Sky News, and as I said, it's one of the best maps I've seen thus far because it includes that loop over there, right? That is the route that Nicola walked. The one thing that I'm a little not happy with is that I think the way this map has been put together is they seem to be assuming that she went on the upper leg of this route. In other words, she went through the gate and then went on the upper leg of this route, saw the witness here, and then came back this way. Whereas I think it's actually the opposite. I think she actually went, I'm talking about when they walked the route. They seem to walk first along the upper route and then this way. In terms of the map itself, the map's accurate, but the way that they've depicted it, not so much. So according to the map, Nicola did go first along this, there's like a little building there, first along there, a witness saw her at 8:50, then she followed the curvature over here. This is where that beach area is, shallow water. That's where the tributary comes in. Let's make this full screen. There's a tributary that joins the river here. You can see as soon as it does, the river widens slightly. Over here, it's fairly narrow. As soon as this tributary joins, it widens. It also, you could say to some extent, straightens a little. There's some sort of straight sections, not there, but certainly sort of after that. It's certainly straighter than what that is and what that is. The banks are also quite defined. You notice that it's quite a defined bank, whereas that's kind of scraggly. Anyway, so she then went around this way and encountered the other witness here, and that is quite close to this section. But anyway, then she apparently turned and kind of took this route back. But that is not the route that the Sky News reporters took, which is a bit strange. But anyway, there you have it. But as I say, this is probably the best map I've seen so far. And now we're going to actually deal with some other insights from that Sky News documentary. So not documentary, just sort of recreating what they saw. They also interviewed this guy who apparently saw Nicola on the day that she disappeared. Let's bring it up like that. And I was a little bit disappointed at what they didn't ask him. They didn't ask what her demeanor was. They didn't ask what the look on her face was. They didn't sort of ask her if she seemed unsteady. They didn't ask, was there anything different about her that day? They simply just asked, they sort of confirmed, oh, I saw her that day. And another thing they didn't ask that I really had wished that they did ask was exactly where was her phone on the bench? Was it on the sort of seating area? Was it where the handrest was? Was it in a way was the sort of top part of the phone facing the river? Was it facing the other way. All of those little details are quite important. They didn't ask any of those questions. The other thing that's quite interesting is he's come to the park as a dog walker. You can actually see his dog has gone halfway down to the embankment and then not further than that. In other words, you see the dog, his dog, doing off leash, doing probably what Willow would do. And that is that he would go sort of towards the water, but only to a certain point, right? And that's quite interesting. That's quite interesting just to see another dog's behavior where it can go anywhere. Well, what does it actually do, right? The other thing I want to show you, I wonder if I can go through these timestamps. 8:43. Okay, so this is one of the first ones. So this is this is what is a little bit misleading with their coverage. So on the one hand, they are taking us to the park. Also, you're getting some good drone eye view, point perspectives. But of course, Nicola didn't, as far as I know, she didn't walk. Like if you look at the timestamp that's there, 8:43 a.m. That's a little bit misleading from my side because they're basically saying that was, I think, when she left the car park. So, but the point is, when the camera crew entered the car park, they didn't retrace Nicola's steps exactly. In fact, they did it. Clockwise, when I think Nicola walked anti-clockwise, just like the guy that they'd spoken to near the entrance. And I think they could have asked him that. They could have said, which route did she take? Did she go clockwise or anti? They could also have confirmed that. But anyway, yeah, you see them walking on the route. Where's the map? So this part over here, I presume, is somewhere over here. It may even be there. I'm not actually sure where it is on this map, but it's not down here. And Nicola didn't walk first this way. She walked first at the bottom here. And so it's unfortunate that the Sky News crew first went this way. In other words, they took a clockwise route. Nicola took an anti-clockwise route. Kind of unfortunate, right? The other thing to note is just how close these structures are. I'm not 100% sure if this is the caravan park, but there are homes right here, right adjacent to this park. Actually, I don't think this is the caravan park, but you can see homes right next to the path over there, which is quite interesting. Okay. I want to greet you guys in a second, but let's first go to the next timestamp, which is 8:50 a.m. This one. So that is the area that you see over here. Actually, yeah, that's actually incorrect. I think they are at this point and talking about a sighting at 8:50 a.m. when it was actually here. Can you see the discrepancy? So 8:50 a.m. This is not where they were. This is, I think, the 9:10 a.m. sighting, right? It says here 8:50 a.m., but this is actually the 9:10 a.m. sighting. That's how I understand it. In other words, they are over here. And they made this error because they walked it the wrong way. But from this perspective, you can see quite clearly there's that tributary that's coming through here, sort of winding through here. So the wire passes along here and then curves around this way, and so does the path. And I think Nicola walked along here and maybe this way. If you ever look over here, you can actually see that the river is actually seems to be moving quite quickly over here. There seems to be motion in the water. Over there, not so much. And, well, we can't quite see this section here. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying in chat. Maybe you're saying you've got this completely wrong. Let's have a look. Butterfly Wing says, witnesses only saw from a distance, not to speak to, and nobody passed her on the walk. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Interesting. Must I've got a totally different impression than you do. The whole nature of these paths is that you're on the path and your dog's there, and people do pass each other. I'm a dog walker myself. You're constantly walking past people. So I think that you got the wrong impression. Maybe I'm the one with the wrong impression, but I think you mistaken. Because as far as I understand, as far as what I read, Nicola did actually stop and interact with the dog walker. So I think you have the wrong impression. It's kind of not good after 3 weeks to misunderstand a thing like that. Butterfly Wing says the witnesses were seen on CCTV. Nicola, blah blah blah. Okay. JG says I have an English bulldog and she hates to walk for more than a block. Well, definitely not Willow, and definitely not my dog. Yeah, so she definitely had a like personal encounter where her dog and another dog interacted, and often then people interact. The witness you saw at the beginning, I don't think he actually spoke to Nicola, but he knew her on sight. He knew the dog, but didn't know anyone's name. I think he said something like that. Okay. So yeah, it's like it's not to be nasty, but it's really important to try and get the facts right in the beginning. Otherwise, all your thinking is off track from then on. So anyway, I'm glad that we could set you straight over there. Fractured Fairytale says, I want to chat so much, but can't even get close to next traction. What do you mean by that? Okay. So let's continue. So first of all, do you guys agree that Sky News have actually gotten the map right, but they've gotten the route of the walk backwards? Do you guys agree with that, or do you think I'm mistaken? Lorraine says it is becoming confusing. I don't think so. In fact, her work apparently had been going quite well. They say this is that she just concluded quite a good deal. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay. So I bring the same criticism that I felt in the Kylie Rodney case and also felt in the Delphi case to this case, where I say we are extremely bad. We, all of us, are extremely bad at getting to know unknown environments. We think we can look at a Google Earth thing and just instantly know exactly what's going on. But this is a asymmetrical landscape. It's not like a grid. It's not it's not straight lines, and you know what I mean. It's not a grid. And so when it comes to that, we're really terrible at telling where's north, where's south, what's going on here. And so seeing the Sky News crew who are there to investigate it get it wrong, it's not to point the finger at them and say, you dodo, or I'm right, you're wrong. It's simply to say, simply to acknowledge we're not very good in environments that we're unfamiliar with in figuring our way around them. right? It's almost like a gambling casino. It's easy to get disoriented. The mapping in the Kylie Rodney case was actually relatively simple, and yet almost everybody got it wrong. Almost everyone was looking for Kylie near the boat ramp, and they thought the party place was somewhere else. So the mapping in the Kylie Rodney case was probably incorrect for about 2 weeks. Also because a lot of people were coming from who weren't locals were coming there and instantly experts on the geography, and then it turned out to be some subtlety in the geography eluded literally seemed to be everybody except Adventures with Purpose when they got there. In the Delphi case, also, where exactly did this crime happen? You go through half a dozen maps and none of them can agree just on that. It's really, I am going to deal with messaging and how law enforcement should treat social media and how social media need to behave. I am going to be dealing with this in this episode, but one of the things I think law enforcement could do is provide these maps instead of these news agencies fumbling and bumbling and getting them half right or whatever. Provide the map right in the beginning. You're right. Provide the official law enforcement map. This is our best guess of what we're dealing with, and make sure it's accurate. Get a local to provide insight, right? Perhaps the nearest cartographer or whatever, right? So in other words, start your investigation, especially if it's in an outdoor crime scene, by getting your freaking map right, right? If your map's wrong, everything else is going to be wrong. If your understanding of the topography is not on track, everything else is going to be off track, right? Don't take 3 weeks to figure out, oh, this is what's actually going on in terms of the map, right? It's really baby step stuff, but get the first baby step right, okay? So anyway, that is 8:50 a.m. And as we know, that was actually over here. But the important thing that we want to see here, let's just do it like this. The important thing that we want to see is what looks so obvious from an aerial view. Let me do it like that. It looks so obvious from an aerial view. What does it actually look like? What does it feel like when you're at ground level? Now, I must say, that view that we saw, where you see the line of woods and houses, it's quite hard for me to work out. Is it actually over here, or is it going over here? I don't know. It's quite hard to actually take this map and I mean, you can see this part here, and it seems to be back from there. So if you look at this image, where is this on that map? Where is this on the map we've just looked at? Any ideas? So there seems to be a path going straight and a path coming in to the side here. So where is this kind of piece over here on the map? And I would suggest, is it perhaps over here? Somewhere here. I just find it quite hard to orientate myself, specifically in terms of that image. We know where this is. There's the tributary coming out. And can you see there's several paths? That looks like another path. And look how close this also is to the river. But the river here is much narrower and more accessible than it is on the other side. Also quite steep banks over here. The other thing that I think is worth noting is, do you see how the topography the topography kind of goes up and down. What appears to be a absolutely flat surface here, when you at ground level, is very up and down. This part is fairly flat, but not completely flat. And then all of these embankments. Some of the trail, some of the walking path is on an elevated, what do you call it? An elevated kind of mound. And one does wonder, is that flood protection? Are these mounds here, are they meant to actually guide the river? These mounds here, that mound there, is that actually flood protection? It looks like it, which tells you something about the characteristics of this river. Is that flood protection there as well? In other words, did somebody bulldoze and create this topography in order to guide the river where it needs to go? Thanks a lot, Jen. Do you mean mine or Sky News? I think you mean Sky News. Okay, so let's go from 8:50 to I think it's 9:01. So this is also kind of an error. This is also kind of an error. And let me ask you why it's an error. So what they basically do is they say at 9:01 a.m. Nicola is here, and that's not, I think, where she was. This is coming. So in other words, where they are here, yeah, you can again see the topography. Look at all these steep embankments. That's going up, and then that's a kind of a depression. Then this comes up again, and then that's steep again. Do you remember the last time we had artificial, artificial boundaries to water? It was in the Kylie Rodney case, where it was a man-made reservoir. So you had artificially steep embankments, and what happened there was a car went into the river. And because it was artificially steep, people kind of assumed, probably also from looking at aerial photos, she couldn't have gone very far. You know, if the vehicle did go in the water, it probably would be visible from the side, unless it went in at speed and it was a very steep embankment. And of course, because it was artificial, everything is artificially smooth. Everything is artificially straight. I mean, that peninsula going in there is artificially straight as well. So can you see here, you've got these artificial, I guess, flood protections, which create a scenario where when you get to the bench, it's extremely steep going down there. So I still want to deal with the number 5 clue we all missed, but the important thing to deal with here is, can you see that? Well, let me ask you the question. Did Nicola make her Teams call? It says here, Nicola Bulley logs into a Teams call. Did she log onto that Teams call here? Was she here when she logged into the Teams call? Don says, are we remembering she's a good swimmer? It's a good point. Oh, thanks a lot, Jen. Okay. Don says she was seen talking. Now, well, the question is, at what point on the route did she make this Teams call? So I guess the simple question to ask is, did she make the Teams call right where these presenters are? Right, there you go. So this is another error in their reporting. The Teams call did happen at 9:01, but it didn't happen here because they're walking the route the wrong way around. So the Teams call probably took place 8:50, maybe somewhere around here. So I suppose it's possible that they in the right area. but when you see what's in front of them, you sort of see that building. So my impression, I could be wrong, my impression when they when that is on camera is that they're somewhere here. They've sort of come back to here, whereas I think it happened over here, much further back. It looks like this photo that they've taken, they're walking along somewhere here. That's the impression I had, even closer. So anyway, it is along this stretch. That's the point. It's somewhere along this stretch. And I must say that definitely shifted my my perception of this, because I sort of realized, wow, she was actually she didn't like sit on the bench and begin the team's call. She was on the team's call while walking, and that could have done two things. The one is if she had earphones like I've got, and I don't like to use the one that doesn't have the cable. It's very cool, but I don't like to use it because I've heard that some of the signals of these cables go right through your brain, and you can get brain cancer. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but I prefer using these. Also, don't like those big ones. Makes my ears perspire, and it's just don't really like it. Those are very cool to look at, but for me, they're not very cool to use. But the point is, if she had her speakers on, her earbuds in her ears, it would have, in a way, prevented people from talking to her, right? If she's passing other dog walkers, it's like, okay, I can't really talk to you. And maybe she wanted that. Maybe she didn't want to talk to anyone. And if she was feeling suicidal, you can imagine she didn't want to engage with anyone. If she was in kind of a dark place, you can imagine this in her ears is a way of saying, don't talk to me, right? I did think it was quite interesting, this whole idea of you got your phone in front of you, you're walking with a dog, but you are not present. You're not really at the park. And can that whole thing where you're not present have played a role in what happened to her? In either way, in a foul play scenario, you're not present, you're not focused on where you are. You've got these steep embankments, or in a suicidal scenario, you are not present, you're distracted, you're struggling to concentrate. She may have been walking, and that's one of the headlines that's come up, that she was struggling with a brain fog. Was she struggling with this brain fog that morning? Was that, was that kind of an issue? And I've always thought, when COVID started, I sort of wondered, what impact is COVID going to have on true crime? I thought it definitely is going to have an impact, but what potential impact could it have? And the murder of Mo Wilson, who couldn't participate in sports, and neither could Colin Strickland, COVID did seem to have an impact. It did seem to have an impact on the Rust incident. Maybe not direct, but indirect. And it seems to have some possible impact in this story as well. Did COVID push Nicola over the edge? If COVID didn't happen, would Nicola have been a happier camper? Did Nicola get COVID? Would be interesting to know. What does Mel say? Her clothing could have become waterlogged. Interesting, the footwear she chose for that day as well. Anyway, so let's go from 90. Oh, so sorry, the real thing I wanted to bring up was something happened before Nicola logged into the Teams call. Do you know what that is? Let's see how well you guys know this case. So they've actually missed a small little step in this whole thing in terms of the timeline. Something happened prior to 9:01 a.m. Do you know what that was? That's interesting. Some people have had problems with vertigo, problems with balance as a result of illness. Let's see what you guys say. Jody says she called her sister. I think that's one of them. She made a call, but she arranged a play date. So just before, in fact, your very last actual text was to arrange a play date for her kids, right? She emailed her boss, but that was, I think, a little bit earlier. That was. Wonder if I've got it here. Okay, 8:50. She was seen with. Not quite sure. 8:53. At 8:53, she emailed her boss, right? But what happened after that? She did something after that. Yeah, so the play date was arranged just before that team's call, just like I think 9 o'clock or 8:59. And some people have said if she was arranging a play date, how could she be suicidal? And we're going to talk about that. If she was arranging something that was going to happen later that day, doesn't that mean she was planning on living, right? We're going to look into that. Okay. Right. So Dover and Dolly says we don't typically arrange plans and then go and decide to end it all. You might be surprised. You might be surprised. Okay. Okay, so let's go to 9 a.m. I think it's this slide. So from 9 to 9:10 a.m., Nicola is again seen with her dog. So this is an incorrect. This is incorrect. She wasn't seen with a dog here, right? She was seen with a dog somewhere up here. So the map is right. The recreation is wrong. So in terms of this map, it's almost like they're saying that encounter happened here, right? When they've kind of got it the wrong way around. This happened. This was around 8:50, not 9:10. So can you see? It does look like Nicola walked this way. Excuse me, walked this way, and then did some sort of loop like that, and then came back sort of that way. Can you see from this image just how steep this embankment is that way, and how steep it is that way? Look how steep it also is over here, right? Can you see that? This is not just a path through a park, it's an elevated park. And because people don't have much of an option, they eventually that path becomes really muddy. It becomes almost like a mud bath because you don't really have much option on where else to walk. And it's not a gravel path, it's a sort of a mud path. And so could that have been a factor? Could the muddiness around the bench have been a factor? Okay, so quite a few errors with the Sky News recreation, but it does at least show you the topography. So let's now go from 9:10. This is another image of the witness. You can actually see them talking to the witness here. You can see one of the witnesses is there. I don't think you can really see the dog in this image, but you can see it in this one. Can you see the dogs going down the embankment over there? But he doesn't go all the way down, he kind of goes halfway down. The other thing to notice is, can you see it looks like the river is actually flowing quite strongly here. It's not calm water that is not flowing or not moving. You can see it's moving. And then you can see here as well, it appears to be moving. It's not racing by, but it's also not just water that is in place. Okay, so that's 9:10. I think there's a 9:20 as well. Let's see if I can find it. 9:33. Is there 9:20? Okay, so let's go to 9:30. 9:30, the call ends, the Teams call ends, but the phone remains logged on. And so I think you can ask the question, did Nicola, whatever happened to her, did Nicola, midway during the Teams call, get up from the bench? Or did she wait till the Teams call to end and then something happened? Because it looked like something happened between 9:20 and 9. Trying to think what it is. Is it 9:10 and 9:20 or 9:20 and 9:30? Can you guys remember? I think it's 9:20 and 9:30. I know it's a 10-minute period. What is the period that's unaccounted for? Is it 9:10 to 9:20? Because when they found the phone, it was still logged into the Teams call, and I think that was 9:33. So 3 minutes after this, the phone was found. Yeah, keys haven't been found yet. Sunshine says, can you talk about the depth of the river around this walking area? I'll get to that in a moment. I also think it's 9:10 to 9:20. They think that she disappeared between 9:10 and 9:20, but it could be 9:20 to 9:30. I think the witness found her phone around about 9:30, and what happened at 9:33? 9:33. Oh, that's when it was actually found. So it could actually be 9:20 to 9:30. Someone says low tide. This part of the river is not affected by low tide. This part of the river is not tidal. Marcus says, I thought 9:20 to 9:30. I did have the let's make sure quickly. I feel quite dumb that I don't have this off the top of my head. Nicola was last seen at 9:20, so it's between 9. So that is missing also that's what's confusing me. There's not unless I missed it, there's not a 9:20 timestamp in this coverage from Sky News. So Nicola was last seen at 9:20, and so she disappeared. She had to have disappeared between 9:20 and 9:30, which is when the phone was found. So there you have it, in that sort of little corridor of time. Someone actually described it really well, that Nicola disappeared almost in a crack in a fabric of life. She just seemed to fall through a crack and disappear. And there's almost something ominous about that it could happen to any of us. And I think that's where you get over imaginative, dealing with the unknown. Well, when you find Nicola, I don't think it'll be that mysterious what happened. She was last seen at 9:20. Yeah. So it does seem like, based on that, that Nicola actually stopped watching the team call, and in other words, in the middle of the call, something happened to her. She either took a decision, or something involving a third party may have happened. We fill it with imagination. Marcus, hope you have a good day. So I want to now deal with the number 5 clue we all missed, and you can actually see it in this image. Do you know what I'm referring to? Right, the number 5 clue we all missed. Any ideas what it is? Let's put it on full screen. Have I got a better image than that one? Maybe this one. What is the number 5 clue we all missed? Any ideas? You can see it in this image. Let's go back one. You can see it in this image. So that is the answer. That is the answer. It's basically that you've got this steep slope going down here, and then it ends in a vertical slope, but not just here, right? That vertical slope isn't just in front of the bench. It continues all the way around there and then keeps going. And so what does this tell you? What does this show you is that this part of the river is quite idiosyncratic in that you've got a particularly steep, like vertical slope down to the water that goes right round. And so anyone attempting to help someone in the water, or a dog trying to get some, is not going to be able to do that. As soon as you're in that water, you can't really get out. Certainly here and all the way around. The other thing about the steep slope is if someone's in the water here, it's very unlikely you're going to see them without being close to the water's edge, right? So what I'm trying to say is if you are in the water somewhere around here, no one is going to be able to see you because the path is set back, and because of the slope, and then the slope goes down like that, you can't see around corners. So what I'm trying to say is whether someone fell in the water or someone deliberately got in the water, if they're in the water anywhere close to this bank, you're not really going to see them. And maybe that was also part of the point. The other thing to note is when water goes around corners, it's like on the far side, it moves the fastest. So can you see on this side, the bank is quite, the slope is fairly gradual, right, on this side. On this side, it's quite gradual, which means the water moving around here is moving slightly slower. The water moving here, the water that is moving around like that is moving much faster. And so you would also imagine that, relatively speaking, so someone said, can you talk about the water depth? Relatively speaking, this side of the river ought to be deeper than this side of the river, right? I understand that there were rocks over here, and that they are at a depth of what did they say? Nicola's fairly short, 5 foot something. I think the rocks are at a depth of 3 foot. So barely a meter deep there. That's right over there. I don't know about here. What I have seen from the sonar is the very center line of this river is very deep, is a lot deeper than you'd expect, because it's being scoured by successive floods. So the river makes this kind of shape, and in the very center line, you can't really see to the bottom. So it's kind of deceptive. It looks a lot slower flowing than it really is, and it looks a lot shallower than it really is. 5'3". 3 meters, 3 meters deep. Let me confirm that, because 3 meters deep is pretty deep. So yeah, here's an article. Nicola landed in waist deep water. That waist deep water is not three meters, but in the middle, the very middle might be 3 meters deep. Let me just see what they say about meters and feet. I see what you're saying. Diving experts doubt Nicola fell in river. The middle is 3.5 meters to 4 meters deep. That is quite deep. So someone said it's about 1.6 meters deep, but within another 4 or 5 meters going downstream, you can stand up. So yeah, so that's quite a variation. You've got 3 meters to 4 meters deep is pretty deep. That's 2 to 3 times taller than the average person. That is pretty deep. Let me just have a look at what they say about rocks. So yeah, so it's we're both right. The water was no deeper than 3 feet, covered with jagged rocks right against the bank. So over here, it's about 3 feet deep, which is 3 feet, I think, is about a little bit less than a meter, I think. And then over here, as deep as 3 to 4 meters. So there's quite a variation there. But that's quite unexpected. So you just try and get the exact translation, 3 feet to meters. Yeah, it's 0.9 meters. So 3 foot is almost a meter, which is not very deep. You guys agree? Not very deep. I have made the case that if her intention was to go into the river, then it's got nothing to do with how deep it is, because you had Ingrid Jonker walk into the sea, and it's really the coldness of the water and the intent that is the critical factor, not the depth of the water. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I want to deal with a couple of other things that have kind of come up. So let me just reiterate, the number 5 clue we all missed was just it's not just how steep this embankment is. And I was really hoping that the drone would literally go over the bench, looking down, go over the bench, over the embankment, over the edge, to give you a sense of a vertical eye view. As a camera person myself, that's what I would have done, and obviously they just don't see it that way. So this is at least quite a good view of it, but I would have literally had the drone fly perpendicularly over the bench, looking down, go over the embankment, sloping down, and then where you look down, you see it drop off, and then you keep going. That's what I would have done. So I don't know. Anyone who's got a drone, maybe you guys can still do that. But that'll give you a very good idea of what we're talking about. In the Kylie Rodney case, they used hot air balloons, a few drones as well, and it was still quite difficult to find the vehicle. Okay, so is there anything else I want to show you? This is just a little further down. It's the same as this. It's just a slightly different angle. But you can see how it continues to be quite a steep slope, and a dog would struggle to get down here or up there again for that matter. And what that curvature shows, what this curvature indicates, is that at this particular point in the river, this part is moving the fastest, which is not good for the whole idea of, well, she has to be in this part of the river. So if you're standing here, that might not look like it's moving that quickly. Well, because it's moving along here. If it's moving along here and there are rocks that are fairly shallow, that could actually make the water move even faster. If you have deep water that suddenly becomes shallow water, the water moves even faster. I mean, you see that with cascades and waterfalls and things like that. As soon as it's almost like a jet engine. As soon as you make the funnel that the water must move through shallower, or there's less volume, then it will actually accelerate. Okay, so what else did I want to share with you guys? Oh, it's this one. So this is from an article. I'm not sure what the original article is, but it's from Yahoo, and it says here, Nicola Bulley, final text sent before missing mother vanished are massively important. And so they basically say the argument here is, yeah, can I blow it up here? Someone who isn't of sound mind wouldn't have arranged to meet a friend for a drink or playmate with the kids, play date with the kids. Do you agree with that? Someone who isn't of sound mind wouldn't have arranged to meet a friend or for a drink or play date with kids. Do you agree with that statement? Dover says no. Jody says no as well. So do you remember in the Chris Watts case, shortly after submerging his kids in oil tanks? Now, can you say that's someone of sound mind? He called the school and said, I think he called the school to say he's withdrawing the kids from school. That's kind of a fairly routine thing to be saying in the context of what had just happened, which isn't routine, right? Dovis is not exactly sound. So I don't really like to share at this sort of level, but I feel like I don't really have a choice, or it has to be sort of related. My mother took her own life, and she took my sister to church that morning, and she apparently phoned my aunt. My mother phoned her sister to make some sort of arrangement over a handbag or something. And so it was a completely ordinary. I listened to I think she didn't get hold of her sister, and so she left a message on the answering machine, and so it was a completely normal sounding arrangement, which didn't give a hint of anything. Also, in my mother's case, there was no suicide note, right? So things that you may think are completely to be expected just is not the case. Suicide notes aren't absolutely part of that sort of thing. And in terms of this whole thing of you wouldn't do that, it doesn't, that argument doesn't hold water either. She booked a play date, so here's the exact time. She booked a play date at 8:57 a.m. Oh, and then she sent a text message to a friend who's, is that the same thing? She booked a play date 8:57. She sent a text message to a friend whose mortgage she had just recently signed off to arrange for the girls to go for tea. And the friend who said they didn't want to be named. Yeah, so that's, I think, quite important to talk about. Obviously, in this case, there are people who want to defend a foul play scenario, and so they're going to just do that. I'm not trying to necessarily defend either, but I do think it's the pendulum is tilting in the direction of not a third party. You know, that's my opinion. Let's have a look at your if you guys have voted, to see what you guys are saying. 36% say no, it is foul play. Well, so the majority of people still think it's foul play, although it's very, very evenly split. 31% say that the specific vulnerabilities revelation has influenced what you think happened to her. And then 33% say, I'm not sure. That is a very even split. It's almost like a third say there was definitely foul play, a third say an accident, and a third say I don't know what happened. That's quite a place for us to be more than 3 weeks later. That's quite that's quite shocking. It is very close. Okay, so what else have I got for you guys? Okay, so do you guys want me to share how there's been a lot of criticism? How should police be handling the social media? Do you guys want me to talk about that? Because they've said the Lancashire police aren't handling this very well. They're not handling social media properly. So should we talk about that? Someone described the police communications as a car crash. Do you agree with that? You guys agree with that? Okay. Okay. Thought Criminal says, I want to stay, but I'm getting a migraine. I hope that's not because of me. But I hope good luck with your migraine. I hope you feel better. Okay, so let's talk about the car crash police communications. And so what I want you guys to do while I'm doing this, if you've got a notebook, if you've got a TCRS notebook, now's a good time to jot down a few of your ideas, because I do want to hear your ideas. The whole idea is to start thinking about protocol. The protocol law enforcement should have, not just in the Nicola Bulley case, but worldwide. What should be the appropriate protocol for law enforcement? So in the context of, it's a developing story, it's high profile, everyone wants to know something. It's easy to say, just don't tell anyone anything. It's easy to say that. What is the right protocol? The other side of it is if you say, don't tell the public anything, well, the public can actually help law enforcement. But then social media cottons onto that and they try to help. It reminds me of someone who I'm having a little bit of a disagreement with, someone who said to me that he cut down a tree that I planted to do me a favor, right? I did you a favor, and then I also took the tree that I cut down away that you didn't even know. I thought you didn't even know that I did that. And so I said to him, the next time you want to do me a favor, would you mind asking me? Like, I know you think you're doing me a favor, but would you mind asking me or informing me that you want to do me this favor? It's the same thing, I think. Social media think they're doing law enforcement a favor. Sometimes maybe social media can ask the question, is this really helpful? The audiences and followers in social media might want to ask themselves, is what is being spoken about here helpful, right? And that's where you can maybe interact with your creator, your favorite creator, and say, I don't know whether this is helpful. And that is likely to resonate. So anyway, here's a couple of thoughts, but I'd like to hear yours. So jot something down if you have an idea. So it's around this question: how police should handle social media, and this is from my perspective. That's why I want to hear your perspective as well. Let's just change this. Social media. So it's not only how police should handle social media, it's also how social media should handle itself. And this is my perspective as someone who's a participant in this area, right? And so let's hear what you guys say as well. Okay, so here we go. If you've been following high-profile cases like I have, I'm sure many of you are and do, you'll notice there's a disturbing pattern that's emerging on the back of distrust of the police. You have the police investigating a case, and then there's like distrust and criticism of the police. On the back of that, social media then takes the lead, and then they say, no, no, come to us. Someone I actually saw was literally saying, don't believe the BBC, don't, these were his words, don't believe the BBC, don't believe the police, believe me, right? And then so what happens then is, because of that distrust and uncertainty, social media will then take the lead and say, I can give you the answers. Are you looking for answers? Do you want to know what happened? I can tell you, right? And then what actually happens is they confidently spread misinformation and rumors. Not everybody, but possibly most bodies. And some of that misinformation is ignorance, out of ignorance. So, in terms of the Sky News thing, they were trying to do a good thing. They were trying to explicate the route, and they were trying to demystify what actually happened. But they ended up spreading a little bit of misinformation that is not where Nicola was at that time, right? And that leads to confusion. Some of it's unintentional. Someone had the best intentions and they just misunderstood it and they made a mistake. If you were watching this video up to a certain point, you might say, but TCRS said that Nicola disappeared between 9:10 and 9:20, right? No, I said I first thought, was it 9:10 or 9:20? Now it looks like it is 9:20 to 9:30. So you can get that sort of innocent misinformation, innocent spreading of information that's not completely accurate. The problem is the not innocent spreading of information. That's a real problem. So where it's deliberate. So that raises an interesting, if difficult, question. How should law enforcement handle the social media monster? Because that's what it is. You had, in the Kylie Rodney case, people saying it's a monster. In the Idaho case, it became a monster as well. Also, what minimum non-negotiable protocols should we expect social media to abide by? Right? And so if you ask me that, like, what's the solution to this? It's quite simple. Tell the truth. Quite simple. Tell the truth, be careful, try to be accurate. That's it. It's quite simple. That's right. And so I think when you're seeing obvious things that are not the truth, and claims that are made that cannot possibly be substantiated, or claims that are made that are deliberately manufactured, like we saw in the Idaho case, that's when you've got to say that's totally unacceptable. We're in a situation where there are real victims, where there's real trauma, where there's real grief and despair, and someone is literally like a vulture benefiting at everyone's expense, because someone doing that is totally heartless. It's like, how can I make money duping people? And who cares about what really happened here? All I care about is myself and making money. So a thing like that, where you can see it's deliberate, we ought to really have no mercy and say that this is totally unacceptable, especially in a space that is supposed to be dedicated to truth, to facts, to justice. I mean, that is perpetrating an injustice on top of an injustice. It's adding insult to injury, right? So anyway, just tell the truth. What do you do with people who don't or won't? I work quite hard to try and do that. I provide sources. I try to anchor the fabric of my work as deeply as possible in the fabric of reality as we know it. And then what I see is I work very hard to do that, and somebody else is quickly and easily speculating, and their channel just grows past mine. Like, my channel is here, and I'm working quite hard to tell the truth and to investigate properly, and someone else is just flying by me, and their approach is totally different. Let's speculate about that. We're allowed to speculate. We can. Could there be an accomplice? Could it be this person? Could this person have committed murder? Maybe it's not that. How about this person? What if that person being accused of murder? You didn't do it, but now you're flavor of the month for some YouTube channel. Are you allowed to speculate recklessly? What do you think happens to the police investigation when someone's watching a YouTube video saying, you need to look at this guy? Why? Because the creator thinks that that's worth doing. Now you start distorting the actual investigation, right? Someone picks up the phone, calls law enforcement, and now law enforcement actually have to, in the real world, look at certain things. So for a creator, it might be a game, and it might be ha ha ha, right? It might be entertainment, and might be interesting, and it might be compelling. But someone's actually now got to go and investigate someone, because you just thought, yeah, maybe that person's worth investigating. Based on what? What evidence? What information? So, like I said, I work quite hard to provide accurate information, and you see a lot of creators working quite hard to provide speculation. And which one do you think frustrates law enforcement the most? So what we're seeing now, right, and it's not just in this case, not just in high-profile cases, also happening generally. We're seeing how the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, covers a multitude of sins. And so you will have any creator that somebody says you shouldn't be saying that, or that's not right, will say, basically, who the F are you to say that? Freedom of speech. You are attacking my freedom of speech. You're attacking my right that I can say absolutely anything and there shouldn't be any consequences. My freedom of speech means I'm allowed to talk about absolutely anything without consequences. I'm a law-abiding citizen and I care about the law, but I'm allowed to talk about absolutely anything. Really? Is freedom of speech infinite? Is it? Are you allowed to speculate recklessly? And more important, what happens if it can be proven? This is quite interesting. What happens if it can be proven that your speculation, that you know that it's false? If a creator is knowingly misleading their followers for money, what then? Can you then also say, yeah, but it's still freedom of speech. I'm allowed to do that. Are you? Let's highlight that. So right now, Fox News is being sued for 1.6 billion for spreading certain claims. I'm not even going to go into it because people will start debating that. But the point is, Fox News is being sued for 1.6 billion, and Fox News's defense is we are allowed to interrogate a particular thought that something happened. We're allowed to speculate that something could have happened. And then, but the flip side is, yeah, but our business was damaged through that speculation. And they saying, and you knew that speculation wasn't honest. So then they say, yeah, but we've got freedom of speech. We are allowed to speculate about things that maybe not everybody believes, because some people do believe that. Yes, but our business suffered because of that. And so how far can you use that freedom of speech umbrella? And so we're about to find out. We're about to find out, is it infinite or is it not infinite? Think about the Sandy Hook case where people were saying it never ever happened. No, it's my freedom of speech. I'm allowed to say what I think. It's my opinion. Am I not allowed to have an opinion? Well, there were maybe real victims in the story, not maybe, definitely. Should you be held responsible for that? Should you be held responsible if things you say cause further distress and are demonstrably false? So as I say, we're about to find out if there are limits to this whole idea of I'm allowed to inform fully and comment fairly. My version of it's just my version of commenting fairly, which is another way of saying I'm allowed to say whatever I want on a public platform, and the truth be damned. And so you could apply that and say I'm allowed to talk about COVID, and I can make some safety. I can provide advice on how important safety is, or it's not relevant. And then you actually have it becoming possibly a public health situation. And I think the whole of YouTube at one point was criticized for allowing certain content onto its channel. So I read about this. The CEO of YouTube is retiring, I think. And then they were talking about her legacy. And then they said one of the criticisms she had to do with allowing certain COVID coverage on the platform, right? And so then you say, can and should free speech be completely unlimited? If somebody suffers damages from statements that are ultimately untrue, is it still free and fair? So that brings us back to the Nicola Bulley case. Right now, in the Bulley case, we're seeing unease and discomfort how they need to deal with social media as well as privacy. Personally, I find it a bit rich. This is my personal opinion. I find it a bit strange if social media criticizes the cops for sharing personal details about Nicola Bulley when just my experience is that social media, especially in true crime, they make it their business to share everything and anything they possibly can find. And you might say, yes, but you do as well. And my response to that would be, I try to do that sensitively. So even in the Idaho case, I still don't mention the names of the survivors. I don't. I certainly don't show I wouldn't have their face on a title image because I don't want them to be victimized. They are part of the story and they do need to be acknowledged, and that part of the story does need to be told. But there's a way of telling it that is almost hypothetical and indirect rather than blaming and pointing a finger. There's a way to have a discussion about it in a what's the word? In a way that limits the blame game, if I can put it that way. And in the true crime space, creators know that a lot of their audiences love to blame. Guilty. He's to blame. It's his fault. Suspect him. The whole witch hunting thing is extremely popular. So if you want to be an not unpopular in true crime, but if you want your channel to grow slowly, then don't engage in witch hunting. If you want your channel to grow quickly, use big all caps and then say, did X do it? And keep doing that on and on and on, and you kind of have a gold mine. But is that right? Is that right? Okay. So I think what we need is something like an industry standard, right? In these situations, how should police treat social media, and how should social media be expected to behave? What you can do, you can write those words, industry standard, in your notebook, and over the next couple of hours, days, weeks, whatever, you might notice that what I'm seeing over there bothers me, and then you might want to make a note and say, this should be part of the discussion on the industry standard. Or you might say, there is a channel that has this approach that I think is right and good. I think it's appropriate. I think it's fair, and I think it's informed by the facts. And so that, I think, is kind of a model, an example of like the industry standard, right? So it's two questions. How should police treat social media, and how should social media be expected to behave? And increasingly, I think social media needs to behave more like and you're not going to like what this sounds like, because people say, in the same way, don't trust the police, don't trust the mainstream media, trust social media. But in my opinion, social media needs to act a bit more like mainstream media. Mainstream media, if they make certain allegations, and by the way, I've written lots of articles. These are all magazine articles I've written, right? If I make claims in a written magazine article, the publication can get sued that are false. The publication can get sued, and I can get sued, or we can both get sued. And I remember once I wrote an article for cycling magazine, where I'd interviewed the top guy in like a cycling federation. He told me something, I quoted him, and then you could see that there was a very strident email to the publisher, and then I had to prove that what was said was said. Unfortunately, it was actually written, I think, in like the Facebook messaging, right? And so that's the other thing, is you can make a claim if you can't prove it, if you can't prove someone said something. And how does that then apply in social media? Can you just say that things were said or whatever? I constantly get in my comments false claims constantly. And then you say, where did you hear that? No, from that creator. I think one of the most recent ones I had, which is not defamatory, it's just misleading, is someone said her phone was found a mile from the bench or something like that. Where did you hear that? Where did you hear that? So you kind of need some kind of industry standard, and because in true crime, we expect people to misbehave, and I think that needs to change. You need to have an honor, especially in true crime. You need an honor system in a way. Instead of solving cases with cogent analysis, we tend to see social media confusing and confounding cases that highlight fiction over facts. And so this is the inherent problem we're dealing with. The problem is the culture is actually wrong. The fact that people won't think critically, and they accept the kindergarten level spoon feeding. I mean, I've got to say, I look at some social media platforms, and the text, like if you look at let's bring myself full screen. If what you're seeing is the title image of a YouTube video, then you'll have like words over here, um, uh, like almost dominating the entire image, is like 3 words. he did it. Almost like you've gone back to kindergarten and you're being taught the ABCs, and the ABCs have got to be giant, otherwise you wouldn't see it. You know, like, remember how you learned the English language? It's like Jack runs fast. Um, uh, Adam eats an apple, right? It's that kind of kindergarten level reptilian coverage. It's all exclamation marks, all huge font, and invariably it's not even true. But it's like, this is going to be so salacious and sensational. But then who's really responsible for clicking on those stories that are so absolutely obvious and so absolutely in your face and absolutely, I mean, what is the story trying to say? Blame this person, hate that person. You know, is that really what we should be doing? Can you imagine if law enforcement acted like that? If law enforcement woke up in the morning and said, and I'm not saying this is real, but Paul did it, like massive, like sort of wake up with that poster like on their bedroom wall. Paul did it. I'm going to wake up now and I'm go and do my work with that attitude. Would you want that? Or would you want someone to be fair and have an open mind and try and investigate it properly? And so that's kind of the difference, is law enforcement have got to keep an open mind and be fair and obey the law and not rush to judgment. Social media's job seems to be in true crime. Social media seem to make their job, let's rush to judgment. I want to be the first one to blame that person or to do that. Shouldn't you be isn't the best way to keep an open mind for as long as possible? Gather information, find out who a person is. So that's the inherent problem, is that, and this is not to criticize you or anybody, it's true of everyone, it's true of me as well. Nobody likes uncertainty. Uncertainty equals anxiety. No one likes feeling uncertain. And someone was telling me, I was walking my dog, and someone was telling me that how she's struggling to book an air ticket. So she works for a university, and she has gotten. She's going to be doing a conference, I think, in Ireland, and she's a lecturer, a law lecturer, and so because she wrote a paper and she's now been approved, the she's been invited to present this paper at a conference in Ireland, right? And now the university are prepared to pay for everything, pay for flights, and she says she will book the flight with a travel agent, but by the time she's communicated to the right department that's supposed to put it through, it takes so long that by the time it gets through, that ticket has expired. Then she tries to do it again, and then she tries to do it again. That is a recipe for incredible stress. The uncertainty of, I'm trying to just book my air ticket, and almost every single day the price gets slightly higher, and the number of seats on those flights get fewer and fewer. She's also tried to book hotel accommodation, and now the one hotel that was the best hotel is now fully booked. And so this thing that should be enjoyable, travel and going to this thing, is incredibly stressful because you don't have certainty. It definitely does feed anxiety. And so one of the things that is kind of a false promise from the true crime community is, we'll give you certainty. It's not real certainty. We don't know the answers, but we'll pretend that we do. We'll be very confident, and we'll be very, what's the word, sassy, right? And we'll do the whole confidence game, but nobody actually knows the answers. But while we don't know, it'll look like we do know, and then we just go on to the next case. Do you have uncertainty in your life? Do you have anxiety in your life? Come to me and I'll soothe it all away. I'll give you all the answers you need. It's not authentic. It's not true. So that's one issue we can't get away from, is that in a high-profile case, people want answers fast. They want simple answers and they want them fast. Now look at the Idaho case. Like, who committed this crime? Let's have a simple answer. It's a serial killer, and well, that's basically it. It's a serial killer. That's the answer. Who did this? A serial killer. Simple answer, fast, is just not true. But this feeling of who did this, thanks, you sorted it out for me, great, now I feel better. It's just not true, but there you go. So think about it. While social media are just saying, giving answers, this is the work of a serial killer, or in the Nicola Bulley case, it's that person did that. It's simple. We've solved the case long ago. Meanwhile, law enforcement have got to put boots on the ground. They are actually investigating. That takes a lot longer. So social media can get way ahead of that narrative, providing a running commentary, simple answers on a platter, and people love it. But law enforcement have got to have high standards, right, when it comes to disclosures. And I kind of get the feeling people think law enforcement choose to how can I put it, that they decide, I'm not going to talk to the media, that's a choice. It's not a choice. They don't have a choice. They can get fired. You know, a really good example is the Moab stop. If those officers had spoken a lot less, listened a lot more, and spoken a lot less, the whole Moab thing, I don't think they would be sued right now for $50 million. In other words, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble in law enforcement expressing your opinion. And that's exactly what's happened in that case. To their credit, they did go and look at what the law said in that situation, and that was quite a complicated situation. I don't know how many people in that situation could have done better. You wish we could have, and you wish they could have, because I think we all feel really bad for Gabby Petito. But it doesn't help when the victim doesn't say, please help me, someone just hit me. In the Nicola Bulley case, it doesn't help that she didn't write a suicide, and I don't want to blame her. I'm not saying if there's no suicide note. I'm simply saying it doesn't help us. Did she give any indication that morning to anyone what is about to happen, if it's the one scenario, right? But my own mother didn't. There was no indication on the morning that she died that anything was wrong. My father was going to make a roast, and we expected her to come home, and then she didn't. So people are more complicated than we wish they were. We are more complicated than we wish we were. Thanks a lot, Susan. So if you've got a notebook, you might just want to jot down a few notes of what's important to you. And as you watch true crime, take note of certain things that people say, especially what they habitually say. And then ask yourself, should that be an industry standard? Should all channels be acting the same way, saying the same things, or not? So let me ask you the following. So can YouTubers make unsubstantiated statements in the context of true crime? Can they sort of say, could it be this? Could it be that? Right? For example, if you're watching YouTube, I don't know what other people are saying, but is there any evidence that Nicola Bulley was murdered? So if you're going down that rabbit hole, what actual evidence do you have of that? And if you don't have any evidence, isn't that reckless speculation? So law enforcement may not make unsubstantiated, which is to say groundless or unprovable statements, but social media doesn't have the same standards or protocols, right? So, but you on that side can say, we know that law enforcement they can only say things that they can prove. They can only say things that they can substantiate. YouTube and the social media commentators can say whatever they want to say unless you stop them and say that's not fair, that's not a logical thing to be saying. You can apply your critical thinking and say intervene in that whole process. We say, I think we're getting a bit off track here. I think that's a bit far-fetched. Dover says, can't we all just get along? Okay. So according to The Guardian, police often expect people to read between the lines when it comes to information release. And I've kind of had that same problem as well. Sometimes I can't prove something, but there's a very strong likelihood of something. And so you tell things in a certain way, hoping people can read between the lines. And then some people think you're playing games. But there are situations that are like that. There definitely are. If you think about the Murdoch case, they can't prove directly that Alex Murdoch committed a crime. And so what they're kind of trying to do is they're trying to show you all the little mosaics that add up to something. And that's also kind of reading between the lines. It's seeing put together, does it add up to something? Right? That's a kind of reading between the lines thing. You see what I'm saying? Gabby's case is heartbreaking. So, and that's the inherent problem is the police sort of say, guys, try and read a bit between the lines, right? So if we say she's got some specific vulnerabilities, try and read between the lines without asking us what exactly that is. You also had the one news reporter saying exactly what I said. Well, reading between the lines, this is suggesting suicide as a possibility in a way that we'd never thought before, reading between the lines. So that's the main difference. Subtlety is not social media's strong suit. As I said earlier, social media likes all caps, exclamation marks. It's absolutely 100% this, not that. Absolute statements of certainty, which is precisely what the opportunists and populists try to provide. Police can't provide that certainty. They don't actually have those answers. And so social media puts up its hand and says, I know the answer. I can give you the answer. And I think you can look at the video titles of a lot of creators and look at how they are promising to deliver 100% certainty, and then ask yourself, did they ultimately do that? Did they? So, in my opinion, some of the best, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but some of the best management of the media and social media came from Moscow PD. I really thought they did better than the Kylie Rodney case. The Kylie Rodney case started with a lot of engagement and then nothing. I think of what has happened recently, I thought Moscow PD did a really good job. I thought they were really clever in what they did. I thought they did a good job. What do you guys think? Can you guys think of another police department that really handled a particular case really, really well? Okay, so let's kind of go through this. What are a couple of guidelines we can start cobbling together? So if we look at Moscow PD, what did they do that seemed to be the right way of doing things? How does a certain creator deal with things that seems to be the right way? So according to this article in The Guardian, right? Car crash, police communications on Nicola case fueled speculation. Police forced to tread a fine line between appeasing information and protecting personal details. I'm just trying to find that article that put it so well about Nicola Bulley falling between the cracks. I think it's this one. You're just seeing it over and over again. Police criticizing social media, the media criticizing social media, and here it is again. Ghoulish online sleuths are shameful. It's almost like, yeah, well, we know that and we accept that, but that's no excuse for what the police are doing. And it's really interesting the way she writes here. Is it Gabby Hinsliff says every British police force must learn from Lancashire's mistakes. Well, not only British, internationally, let's learn from those mistakes. Personally, I don't know if it's such a huge mistake, but maybe I'm missing something. I think they try to do the right thing, and I suppose it is sensitive. Anyway, so this I thought is written so well. Let me bring this article up. She slipped through the smallest hole imaginable, an invisible rip in the fabric of a seemingly ordinary day. I thought that was so well communicated. Nicola Bulley was there 1 minute, living a working mother's familiar multitasking life, walking the dog, and gone the next. Really well written. I'm not going to deal with the rest of what she says in the article, but just to say, Nigel Green, a former journalist who spent many years researching the inharmonious relationship between the police and the press. That's from this article from Robin Winter. Said that officers are often in a difficult position. They're damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they say something, then they get criticism. If they don't say something, they're criticized as well. And then the article goes on to say from The Guardian, in recent years, police have generally become extremely cautious about releasing any information at all. So what you're almost trending towards is a situation where the police have got to tighten their belts and release even less information because they get into increasingly more trouble when they do release information. I also think so. Jean says, I'm tired but love hearing. Okay. I hope you shouldn't lose too much sleep. You can always play this on replay. And obviously when things get out of hand, then you've got to have gag orders, and they've got to try and protect the actual legal process by trying to shut down the narrative. If social media could cover stuff in a responsible way, you wouldn't need gag orders. If there wasn't misinformation circling and rumors and stuff, you wouldn't need gag orders, right? So as I said earlier, I think Moscow PD provide the gold standard, and which brings up this whole idea. Graham Wetton, the author of How to Be a Police Officer, spent 30 years in the police, and he said officers are still learning how to manage social media and a 24/7 news culture. I think that's true of everybody, whether you consume social media, whether you watch a lot of YouTube or whatever it is, you're learning how to deal with it. And whether you a producer of it, you're also learning how to deal with it. We're all learning. But from the perspective of law enforcement, it's particularly sensitive because of people have a right to privacy, which is changing. People's rights to privacy I think, becoming more urgent, more in terms of online. more in need of being necessary to be protected, I've certainly found myself trying to be more and more and more sensitive. The Kylie Rodney case really opened my eyes to how insensitive some people are, just treating young kids like characters in their own little personal soap opera, and that's not the case. They're real people. And I think that's another story, is the younger someone is, the more you have a responsibility to protect them. I think that should be part of the industry standard, that social media's responsibility to itself increases when you're dealing with younger people, and that's part of the issue with the Idaho case. That's why I say I don't think it's fair to the survivors just to be putting their photos up, because they must complete their university at that they must complete their education at that university. They don't want this to become the defining moment in their entire lives, and YouTube and social media is trying to do that. That the sum of their entire lives is this moment when they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were very unlucky. There's more to it than that, but that's a lot of it. So, how do you manage social media and the news culture? What can we say to police departments? This is how you should handle YouTube. This is how you should handle the whole social media thing. And I think it's Graham Wetton who says, I don't think they handled the media comms terribly well. He said a vacuum was created by not releasing information. And so what he's suggesting there is that you need to get ahead of the curve. You need to provide that information fairly early on. And I think even Moscow PD said we could have spoken to the media sooner. Remember, they said there was no threat to the public, and they said this was a targeted attack, and then later it's not, and then again that it was. They've got to make up their minds quite early on to talk to the media, what they're going to say, how much they're going to reveal, and everyone needs to be on board. Everyone needs to, you can't have one officer saying something and another one saying something else. You kind of need a consistent message, right? So let's have a look at a couple of do's. These are some of my suggestions. And I think I put them up on Patreon. So let's do this. Let me just do it like that. Can you guys see that? So here are my suggestions for a couple of do's. These are suggestions to law enforcement. Emphasize that unsolved cases are ongoing, not because they're simple, but because they are complex and and tangled. Keep repeating that message. It's not a simple situation. The whole thing with Nicola Bulley isn't a simple situation. Probably, that's my opinion, because of the topography, the river that we're dealing with isn't simple or straightforward. It's both a tidal river, and it's a river that has tributaries flowing into it, and it is its own animal, right? Its shallowness and coldness are factors as well, and fluctuates. As the weather fluctuates, the river fluctuates, just as we saw in the Kylie Rodney case. Anyway, what law enforcement need to keep emphasizing in high-profile cases that don't resolve quickly, it's not simple or straightforward. YouTubers will be telling you it's absolutely simple. That person did it. Go after them. It's not simple or straightforward. So anyone saying it's simple and straightforward, that should already be a warning, right? Then release news updates on police social media platforms. Don't give it to the media. Bring everyone to your social media. The police's social media platforms. Obviously, you need someone who's trained in social media to manage those platforms, preferably with a little bit of legal knowledge as well, and try to get the conversations going on there, right? You had that done really well in the Idaho case and fairly well in the Kylie Rodney case to begin with. Law enforcement can also very briefly and in a limited way engage with initial comments. So someone might say, I can't remember, but I did see, I think it was in the Kylie Rodney case, someone said, did her boyfriend do X? And then the response was immediate, no, that's not true. So there can be a little bit of engagement with social media dealing with the initial misconceptions. Right? They can dismiss obviously incorrect speculation. Obviously, they can't engage infinitely with every single point. They're not going to be able to do that, but they can make some initial inroads into that whole process. It's got to be done carefully and it's got to be done in a limited capacity because you can't start, otherwise law enforcement are going to become social media channels if they just engage in every single thought. They can't do that, right? And there could be legal consequences. Then keep messaging consistent. Decide what is common cause. That basically means what is obviously true. What do we know is obviously true? And then that is what you can reveal. Don't be drawn into revealing more and then apologizing and explaining that later. Any area where you think, you know what, we're 90% sure, but you're not 100% sure, maybe we should hold that back for a while. In the Moscow, Idaho case, cops wanted to say it was a targeted attack early on. Then they changed their messaging. You want to try and avoid that. In this case, I think it was wrong of the police to say Nicola definitely fell into the river, or we're only looking at that aspect. I think that was, in other words, you need law enforcement to maintain the scout mindset, to stay curious, to keep an open mind. And that's almost not what people want. People want an absolute statement of that is what happened. And so I think that's also something that needs to be reiterated by law enforcement, is to say we need to keep an open mind for as long as possible. We need to be open to all the possibilities for as long as possible. But at a certain point, you've got to start choosing what is more likely. So that's the other thing is social media sometimes ask possibility questions even after a verdict, even after sentencing. Like in the Chris Watts case, let's now, after he's in jail, let's go and investigate Nicole Kessinger. Let's keep asking questions. There's a point where you need to stop doing that and follow the logical track, right? Also, ask social media for help. And one of the things I would have said in this case is you needed to provide a map of Nicola's movements. Law enforcement needed to provide that map like on day one, as soon as they were like, okay, this is a serious problem. And that doesn't only help the public, it helps them. It helps anyone who's trying to look for someone. Well, get your map right, get your map out there. The longer you take to do that, the longer everything is going to take. What law enforcement could also have done is provided a hydrodynamic map of the river. What I mean by that is, in the same way they did that in the Scott Peterson case, you can provide some insight into the movements of water. And so an armchair detective can look at that and go, I wonder whether that, and in that way they are being informed of the facts and they can become somewhat educated investigators themselves. What's wrong with that? Crowdsourcing using scientific information. They can provide descriptions of the victim, a timeline, right? You have police providing the timeline, not the media. And then they can also make a list of the things they don't know and the things they want to know, right? But in a clear way. The most important thing we want to know based on what we can know is what kind of person was Nicola? What were relationships like? And that did turn out to be really important information. What was her state of mind? That did turn out to be important information. That's not necessarily our business, but it's certainly important talking about the really intimate stuff. But it's certainly important in terms of the investigation. So you might want to use the fact that there's certain locals in a certain area. You might say, we'd really be interested in, I don't know whether there's a legal thing there. If somebody does a search and you've asked them to, and they sprain their ankle, can they sue you? I don't know if that's a legal thing, but maybe you can say, we're quite interested in looking at that area. Does anyone live in that area, kind of thing. Then you can suggest an official hashtag. The police can lead the way in saying, we're going to be doing Nicola Bulley missing, or whatever it is. And they then define the hashtag. You don't let social media come up with it. You decide what it is. And then you can kind of have an authentic hashtag, or a hashtag associated with the official narrative, right? And then they can also at the same time call out hashtags that are misbehaving. They can say, you know what, there's this hashtag, X is guilty. We're not very happy with what's going on there. This is an important way law enforcement can influence and take the lead in terms of social media. And I also think it's important that social media, that law enforcement are aware of what's happening online. And that's also the part that's quite difficult, is where do you stop paying attention to what's going on online? Because there's a lot of nonsense. So do you pay attention to the nonsense as well? So I think you've got to try and maybe you should get someone who's a true crime person who then informs you of what is worth paying attention to. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you could have a true crime consultant. Maybe that's going to happen in the future. If true crime is having such a negative influence on police departments and on investigations, maybe you need someone who is in tune to that to tell you what's going on there, right? Sometimes social media does provide insight, so it can be useful. It's not that it's all doom and gloom, that it's all a problem. Remember Koberger's forum post, so that was very helpful. Red, Blue, and Bethune sighting of Gabby's van, that was helpful, but they're few and far between. So maybe you do need almost a consultant. I do think it's necessary to say this, that most of social media, in terms of true crime, I mean, there's like the true crime community, and everyone, kind of the people that are active in that area. But then there's also just TikTokers, random people who say, oh, I'm in the true crime space now. This case is popular, I'm going to just tack myself onto it. So most of it is actually worth ignoring, most of it. Tell it like it is. So hold social media accountable via the mainstream media. And we saw that I thought Moscow PD did a great job there, basically saying, I don't know if you guys remember, one particular creator was saying that the victims were hogtied. He said that is absolutely an absolute statement. And then they said that's not true. And then later on he said he has this recording. That was absolutely not true. I didn't really watch his channel, and I watched very, very little of what he did, but I did notice him saying that there was blood coming down the kitchen walls, but also like an absolute statement. And I thought, I can't prove that, but I'm 95% sure that that's not true as well. And so hold them accountable for those claims. You need to say, this was said, that's not true. Identify threads where there's reckless or damaging speculation. Call them out. right? You don't need to mention the creator's name, but you can say that thing that's being communicated right now is not true. Appeal to the public and the mainstream media to also call out and report unacceptable behaviors. It's not just the police are the bad guys, don't say this, don't say that. You're also trying to have the reporters in the media who obviously are very aware of, even more aware of social media, and then also have them highlight rumor mongering, and then they can even to some extent interview other creators who what's the word, call out their fellow creators, like you had in the Idaho case. Help us. I don't necessarily mean me, but help us manage our space by giving some of us a voice, and yeah, that whole process. Also, inform social media about the law regarding slander and making false accusations. You actually had that in the Idaho case as well, where it made headlines that someone was slandering a professor and she just kept doing it. Then she got a cease and desist and she just kept doing it anyway. Say you're breaking the law and make it explicit. Identify the worst offenders and take steps against them. You're not going to be able to stop everybody, but you can identify the worst offenders, right? And then you can kind of almost give a warning, and you can you can say this is not true, and if they persist in that, then you actually apply the law, right? And then the things I would say don't do is I would say don't hold yourself accountable to social media. The authority here is law enforcement and the law, not social media. May be a law unto itself, but it's not the law. Don't hold yourself accountable to social media. In fact, I would say if you want to be miserable and be miserably unhappy, anybody, hold yourself accountable to social media. Don't spoon feed social media. Don't feed the monster. That's how you're going to interpret that any way you see what that means. For me, my policy was always that I don't give any oxygen to conspiracy theories, but I've found over time that you can't ignore it. There's a lot of it that you actually can't ignore, that you've got to address it and debunk it. That was what somebody said was the approach to the Sandy Hook thing. Was they said, well, we thought if we ignored it, it would just go away, and it ended up becoming a multi-million-dollar enterprise peddling these stories. You think it's going to go away, but sometimes you've actually got to address it. And if you address it too late, then it also can become a monster. And then also don't play open cards. Don't be too transparent, even though you might say law enforcement's job is to tell the truth. While you can be a little bit selective with the truth you give, almost like Superman. You can say certain things, but you don't say everything. You can have weekly or bi-weekly press briefings. You don't have to do a briefing every single day. You don't have to provide an update if there's nothing to update. You can control the narrative or be the definitive source of credible information on the narrative without giving away, playing all of your cards, put it that way. And then I think this is quite important, and we saw it play out so interestingly in the Idaho case. It is a game of cat and mouse. It is a game. For active investigations, the perpetrator needs to be wrong-footed. So bear in mind the perpetrator is also watching. So you can create an impression that might give the perpetrator a lot of confidence. And I think in the Idaho case, even the public thought, cheapers, they don't actually know anything. They are no closer to catching this guy. And I think the perpetrator thought that as well. So that is a way that law enforcement can be quite clever. And it can also wrong fit social media, because social media might think, well, I'm much cleverer than law enforcement, and then are they? And that is maybe a way to keep the perpetrator and social media in line to some extent, is play the game then. Play the game of cat and mouse. You're trying to catch the perpetrator. Social media, we know what kind of animal you are. Well, if you want to play a game, we'll play a game with you as well. In other words, don't be naive with the thing that's on the cards. And then the other thing is, don't engage too often. In the Kylie Rodney case, you had daily briefings and then none at all. So decide how much you can sustain, right? So you do need to pitch up quite early on and show your face and say, this is what's going on. But decide what you can sustain. And then look at also the results of those messages on social media. Super Chuffer says, is there a perpetrator here then? Not, yeah, I wouldn't use the word perpetrator here. I think there are dynamics. I think there are certain forces, but in my opinion, I don't think there's a perpetrator here. I don't think what I've just said there applies here. This is not like the Idaho case. I don't think someone's going to be prosecuted in the disappearance of Nicola Bulley. That's my opinion. We'll see. So let's have a look at the poll. Wow, no foul play has gone up to 38%. Quite surprised that most of you still believe that foul play is the situation here. 29% say that has influenced you, and then 32% say you don't know what has happened. Okay. So all I can assume is that social media are pushing the foul play narrative, because maybe that's what you want to hear. You believe it, and they are pushing it, and so that seems to be the most logical outcome. Personally, I don't think that's the case. I think the Virginia Woolf thing shows what can happen, and I think the circumstances are more. I basically accept the police interpretation here. I think that is sound. My personal thing. Beverly says, I've got no idea what happened. And that's kind of the thing. Police don't want to be in that position after 3 weeks to say, we've got no idea. After investigating for 3 weeks, asking questions, gathering information, you should have some idea. Have an open mind, be curious, but you should have some idea. You should be going more one way than another, I would say. I don't know if I don't know if she did go out to sea. I think she was found near a bridge, near the sea. As far as I know, she wasn't actually washed out to sea. She was almost. I don't exactly know where it was, but as far as I know, she was still along the river, close to the outlet. That's how I understood it. Jen says, I don't think it's foul play at this point. To me, you have foul play when there are a couple of obvious signs of that. So it could be text messages on her phone. It could be her phone is stolen, or something. Piece of her clothing is ripped, or someone was seen running away, or she thought she had a stalker, or there's some red flag here or there. And over time, those red flags start fluttering, and there's more and more, and we just don't really see that here. Benzo says, I don't think that's a reasonable method. That's a very tough thing to sort of address. Do you think the knife murders in the Idaho case, do you think that's reasonable? Do you think that makes the most sense? It's just not the way you think isn't the way someone else thinks. Yeah. Is what is reasonable when you're talking about that? Might be reasonable for you, but is it reasonable for someone else? Is writing a note reasonable? Well, for someone else, it's not. One of my criticisms in the whole idea that Vincent van Gogh. So this whole thing is: did she commit suicide or was she murdered? It's exactly the same question in my book, The Murder of Vincent van Gogh. So I would have said Vincent van Gogh, if he committed suicide, he would have written a note, right? Because he wrote about 900 letters. He wrote a letter almost every single day. He was an expressive person. He was communicating, like he was wearing his heart on his sleeve. Anything that was happening, he was writing it down. So why wouldn't he do that regarding that? And also in the run up to his death, why didn't he start saying, I'm not feeling terribly happy, I'm feeling depressed, I feel hopeless? Why is that absent from his letters? Right? uh, One thing that people don't realize is there's no difference between suicide and murder. There's also the motive to kill. The difference is it's the motive to kill myself as opposed to the motive to kill somebody else. It's the murder of myself. There's still a motive, there's still dynamics involved. People just don't like to think about it. Is the murder of myself premeditated? Is the murder of someone else premeditated? It's exactly the same thing. Are there red flags in the motive to murder myself? Are there red flags in the motive to murder somebody else? Are there more red flags in the motive to murder myself, or more red flags in the motive of someone else to commit murder? Why would someone want to kill Nicola compared to what was going on in her life and what was going on in her mind? And I'm not saying I'm giving you the answer to that. I'm saying that's the question you've got to ask. That's the question you've got to address. Okay, do I have anything else I wanted to share with you guys? Let's just see if there is. Do you guys have any gold standard things you want to say? How social media should be treated by law enforcement, how social media should act? Any of your thoughts, any of your notes? Beverly Lawyer says, why would she take a conference call? Okay, so you could also ask, why did she take her dog? Right? She loved Willow, right? She loved the dog. Why would she take her dog along if that's what she's going to do? And I think you can answer that in two ways. The one is, well, what would Paul say if she said, I'm going for a walk without Willow? Paul would be like, that. I'm already suspicious of that. What would other dog walkers say if she wasn't with? So the dog gave a kind of plausible deniability in that respect. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is the dog was found where I believe Nicola went into the water. And maybe Nicola wanted that to happen. Maybe Nicola wanted the dog to be found, right? In other words, the moment she steps out of the picture, very quickly someone steps into it and then takes control of the dog. And maybe also she wanted because her phone is clearly visible and because the leash is clearly visible, someone will quickly realize we need to look after this dog. And isn't that exactly what happened? You know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is it's the wrong way of thinking. Why did she take the dog with? Well, she had thought about that. Why did she take a conference call? Well, I think you could ask it like this. What else was she supposed to do? I suppose you could say, should she have checked the news? Should she have checked the weather? Should she have not checked anything? Maybe she did that in order for the people who knew her to have a sense that she's still present, so that people didn't search for her too soon. So in other words, the dog was found quite early on, but the search for her started much later, and that's exactly what happened. I think something that people don't think about is probably someone who commits suicide is going to be thinking where they want to be found and how they want to be found. Do you know what I mean? Someone who commits suicide is going to be thinking, if I do this, who's going to find me? And how do I want that to appear? And I mean, Brian Laundrie had that thought. I want people to find a skeleton. I want it to look like I took responsibility, or I paid the price, and I got my just desserts for whatever. That was his thing. But you can bet that someone is thinking about that. And with Virginia Woolf, you kind of got the sense that she didn't want anyone to ever find her, that she wanted to just disappear, right? Go into water and just disappear. No one is confronted with a corpse. And that's, I think, part of the psychology. Let's have a look. Okay, so some of the latest stories. Victim shaming of Nicola Bulley has thrown an unflattering light on modern Britain. How police should have avoided dreadful invasion of Nicola Bulley's privacy. Dog walker who found missing Nicola Bulley's phone knew something immediately was wrong, wasn't right, and it wasn't at the point. Didn't Nicola Bulley want someone to know immediately something's not right to take care of Willow? So these are some of the latest stories. Victim shaming has thrown an unflattering light on modern Britain. Police threw her reputation under the bus. Her disappearance brought out the worst of us. How police could have avoided the dreadful invasion of Nicola Bulley's privacy. Officers say they thought transparency was the best course of action. Can I be honest about how I feel about this? Is I feel the priority should be looking for Nicola Bulley. The priority shouldn't be blaming whomever, especially the police, for doing something when their job is still to find Nicola Bulley. So if you do want to blame someone for a privacy violation, do it after they find Nicola. They've still got a job to do. That's just my personal thing. Is your priority is like the crime in this case, the priority in this case, the thing to get indignant and hysterical about information about Nicola Bulley, or is the priority let's try and find Nicola Bulley? I don't know. I find it fucked up. I find it really fucked up. let's get indignant that Nicola Bulley is still missing, not indignant about what somebody said. Her life is what matters. Finding her body is what matters, not, and all of that stuff matters, but it's secondary at this point. Melia says from day one, the public got involved as they do. It's not the police's fault that they do this anyway. They were forced into more detail. Get behind the police. They have a hard enough job. Yeah. I would want to know what that welfare check was about. I would want to know what that involved. I'm curious. I mean, I would want to know. Okay. Someone was saying Nicola Bulley's been found. Don't think that is true. Don Spencer, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's just do a couple of final searches here. So it's actually quite astonishing, even as high as the Prime Minister? Even the Prime Minister has spoken about this case. Let me just sign in here. Anyway, yeah, trying to bring up an article from the Times, but basically, even the Prime Minister is now talking about that as well. So, yeah, if anything, what they need to do is find Nicola Bulley. I think that's really the priority. And when they find her, I think that addresses then the question of what happened to her. Easier said than done, but that needs to be the priority. Okay. Terry is calling Don the lead scout. Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. But I do think beyond this video, I think you guys need to. There over 400 of you in chat. It's not a lot of you, but it's like Jesus had 12 disciples. It's important to start somewhere, and I do think this whole thing of you go from one case to the next, and so often social media emerges as the villain, as up to mischief and doing things almost like children. And some of us are adults here. Some of us act like adults. Some of us appreciate the gravity of these cases. They're real people, and it's not just another story. It's a real person with a real life, just like you're a real person with a real life. And I want you to try and in your notebooks, try and just keep track of things you're seeing that you think are right for an industry standard, and things that you think are obviously wrong for an industry standard. And then let's talk about this again. If you're watching this on replay, you can leave a comment and just say, I think this needs to be part of the industry standard. And if you're a doctor, that they say, do they call it the Hippocratic Oath? Is first do no harm. I quite like that idea with true crime. In order to test whether you should be having certain conversations, I think the question should be, number one, first, do no harm. Are you doing harm by having whatever conversation you're having or not? And you can evaluate this live, this conversation I've just had with you now, through that exact same test. Me covering the route that Nicola actually took, me saying the number 5 clue we all missed was this steep bank, and that it helps us understand the circumstances better, and that's where the river was flowing fastest. We're getting a better understanding of the river. And then we also talk about, is that doing harm? Is that conversation doing harm or not? And that's the same question I think we need to ask of all coverage. Is it ultimately doing more harm than good? Is it creating more of a problem than it's helping find a solution? That's a question that needs to be repeatedly asked. And that's one that you guys can ask and you guys can answer in your heads and in your hearts. And you can ask one another. You can be on a live chat in someone else's video and you can say, I don't know if this aren't we doing a bit of harm thinking along these lines? Or isn't blaming someone at this point, isn't that a bit doing more harm than good? And so if it's first do no harm, I suppose you can also ask, how can you be part of the solution, right? Are you good at integrating the facts in a logical way? Or are you accurate at least? Okay, so that's really my take on it. Run the World says creators should look at the person they love most and ask themselves, is that person, what would you do if it was you? What would you do if, if there's someone close to you, as you say? Hale says, is the hubby ruled out 100%? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. It's like I've asked the question from the beginning, does he have an alibi? I don't know. I don't have a straight answer to that. I do think if there was suspicion, then there would be more talk about that. Terry, thanks a lot for being here. I know it's getting late in California. Take care. Let's go through the last couple of comments. Railvin says, good night, all. Cry mouth out. Okay. I also felt there were some strange comments that he made, but I think if you followed me, I said I don't know if it elevates it to that level. I don't know if you guys remember that. Thanks, Zircon. Thank you very much. I also like that. Okay, thanks everybody for being here. Take care. You must enjoy your weekend. Where I am, it's almost 10:30 on a Saturday morning. So I'm going to, I don't know, try and get some exercise. My dog needs some walking. We've had a lot of rain, so I might actually be taking him to somewhere that's actually a little bit like what you're seeing here. So do you want to go for a walk? Timmy, go for a walk. Let's go for a walk. Come, let's go. That did it. I think when I say it and I don't move, then it's hypothetical. But when I do move, there you go. Anyway, don't forget to walk your dogs. Smell the flowers. Feel the sunshine. And I'll see you guys next time. All the best.